Hey, everybody. Welcome to Business Blackbelts. This is actually the inaugural episode of the show where we go deep with business leaders, entrepreneurs, nonprofit directors, all about their story, what drives them, what's made them successful, and quite literally how they got their black belt, in this case, in business. So Andy White is my guest today. Andy, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And I know this is episode 1, so we really appreciate it because we don't have a lot of listeners yet.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I'll look back at it in 4 or 5 episodes and I'll be like, I think we should have done that. So
yeah. Absolutely. So obviously we've known each other for a little while, but I love to start these just very open-endedly. So for anyone who doesn't know you, and this can be a personal or a professional definition, but if you had a few sentences, how would you describe yourself?
Well, I think in a few sentences, I just simply say I'm a business owner and family man, and I'm trying to grow a technology business to help people save time in a important yet mundane task. So, but I boiling it down, it's really I'm a business owner and founder and family man, and besides those 2 things, there's really not much bandwidth for anything else.
Yeah, I feel you there. Now, family man, talk through that a little bit. What's the backdrop there?
Yeah, sure. I have a wife, Sarah, and then 2 unbelievable daughters, Emma and Mary. We live in Southern California. My oldest is in high school and my youngest is in junior high. So that goes without saying, we're kind of a cross between Uber and cooks at our house. So.
And you live right near the ocean.
I do. I'm really lucky. We live in Orange County, and I've lived there my whole life. During college, I went down to San Diego, so I didn't venture too far. And after college, I came back to Orange County to kind of start my career. And that was about the time when the .com bubble had not yet burst, but was kind of right on the cusp of faltering. So figured, the writing was on the wall, and figured it'd be good to get back to Orange County, where I had a pretty big personal network when I decided to kind of take my first career step out of college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's go into that. So obviously you're kind of a consummate entrepreneur. I know you run or invest in multiple software companies. How did you get into that? I mean, because when you got into it, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not trying to age you. Entrepreneurship wasn't quite yet popular.
Well, you can age me. I'm 44. And although some days I feel a lot younger, some days I feel a lot older, but it's just always been fascinating to me. I love the concept of creating and building and associating myself and being a part of great teams. And that's really the fun part about being an investor, especially technology investor. There's something about a technology company that's just so much different than more of a traditional company. And I've been involved in both. The technology companies, I feel, have just such a kind of a leading edge feel. They're definitely pushing a boundary. They're really doing something new. And I'm not saying that traditional businesses don't have new components to it. That's not what I'm saying. But there's just something about being a part of a team or associating with a team that's trying to grow something that's never been done before, using technology, which in definition is something new and relatively untested. So it's just really fun and dynamic and fast moving. And I think that's always been the draw. I've been in part of other industries before, but have really been gravitating over the last kind of call it 5 to 10 years into the technology space a lot more.
And how does it work? So you always hear the stories of software entrepreneurs, because I consider myself as a services entrepreneur, as a kind of easier on-ramp. You're just doing a job, you fractionalize and do it for more people.
Yeah.
When you're a tech entrepreneur like you, were you personally bothered by the problem Filejet solves? Like, did you just go on the Inc. 5000 and look up good software ideas? How does it work when you would actually start one of these things?
No, that's a really good question. And it really did start with my own frustration and my own need. And it really also started out of I had another company that was a little bit, it was actually very kind of analog and a very process driven company, very service process based. And I saw what we were doing there. And then I felt really where I thought the gap was for myself personally, and thought, well, if it's happening for me and we're hearing it from our other customers or other people that I know or other entrepreneurs and investors, this is a problem. And that's really how we got kind of the concept and the idea for when we were kind of scratching it down on the yellow pad, and really how it came to fruition. And of course it's evolved, right? When you start something, it all sounds like a great idea, and then you kind of go down that path, and there's definitely a lot of course correction. And Filejet's no different. We definitely kept tweaking and modifying the platform, so it just became a lot more laser focused on where we wanted to be from an organization. And we really want to be laser focused related to our space, which is entity compliance and maintenance. And that's really helped us stay, I guess, in our lane, or whatever people say along those lines. So it's just a lot of iterations and a lot of, where was the gap for me? And then start really listening to the customers, because after, my experience only goes so far, but then when you start getting it in the hands of users, you hear things and receive so much valuable feedback that you're really able to make a really cool product, because it's got to work for them first, because they're the paying customers.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know this might be a long-winded answer, but so walk me through what you were experiencing and how you built the company and what the company actually does. So obviously, most of this audience is probably entrepreneurs or salespeople, but very much relates to, the pain in the butt this time of year of taxes and things. But I want to really understand in painstaking detail. You're doing X. You thought this sucks. What if we could do Y, and how does it all work?
Yeah, that will be a big answer. And I think I'll do my best to make it concise and bite-sized, but essentially what Filejet is an entity lifecycle management platform for, and I'd say entities, your business entities, your corporations, your LLCs, nonprofits, LPs, et cetera. And as you have those business entities for whatever industry you're in or whatever you're trying to do, every year, sometimes it's yearly, biannual, or at different intervals, you have these annual reports that need to be filed with the states that you're operating in, to make it simple. So you have a Delaware LLC that's also registered in California, Arizona, and Nevada. You're having to file those annual reports depending on when they're doing those states. And they're not the same. They have different fee structures. They have different forms. The forms are constantly evolving. And it really can get, it's like I said, it's important, right? It's very important to stay in compliance, and I'll kind of hit on why it is, but it just becomes this burden. And it's really a secondary burden, because as business owners and entrepreneurs, we're all really focused on what our business is. Your business of marketing, you're out marketing. If you're, say, private equity, you're trying to source transactions, work with your investor base. Same thing for commercial real estate and a lot of other industries that are entity intensive. And we're industry agnostic, and which is really what's fun about it, is we're seeing these pain points in all these different industries. But ultimately, you really want to focus on your business. So the tasks that you can offsource onto an automated platform where where you trust it, and you're not having to worry about doing something, it just makes you so much more focused. And really, that was, kind of getting full circle, my problem. I had come from the commercial real estate world early on in my career. And, typically in the real estate business, you're forming a new LLC, at least one new LLC for any acquisition you're making or any property purchasing. A lot of our clients actually form two LLCs or sometimes more. And so all of a sudden you've got, kind of 4 or 5, 6 properties. And especially if they're in different states, you're all of a sudden kind of getting burdened with staying on top of this compliance. And really, that was the genesis for Filejet. It's like, why can't we have a platform that tells me what to do, when I need to do it? It's not asking me a bunch of questions. It's asking me the minimal amount of questions and automating as much of it on the back end. And that was really kind of how it started. So it was really to kind of to get rid of a pain point, to provide more focus. And it's not one of the, it's definitely one of those things that sneaks up on you, and you miss the deadlines. And deadlines are kind of, some of them are really expensive, but a lot of the fines are kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts. California, it's $250. All of a sudden you miss a date. It's like, oh shoot, I could have filed a $25 report, and now it's 10 times that. So we see a lot of that for each state. It's just easy to get overwhelmed, and Filejet really separates your responsibility in that area. And that's kind of what I love about a lot of the technology products today, whether it's Filejet or anything else, is we have the luxury nowadays with automation and sophisticated platforms, cloud-based platforms, and getting into future technologies or present technologies like AI and machine learning. But we have a lot of tools at our fingertips. And really what we're seeing is a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners go, wait a minute, if this is where I need to be spending my time, let's get this off my plate, or let's get this off the plate of someone who's on my team, because I need that team member really focused in these areas. So Filejet does that. And because I'm not trying to make this a huge commercial for Filejet, but anecdotally, because we're, narrow and we're focused, it's something easy to offload. And that's the case for a lot of platforms nowadays, which is great.
Yeah. And this is just an entrepreneurial geek out question. So if you were earlier in your life, like didn't have as many maybe financial resources, or would you be more inclined to have started like a services business that did this for people versus going the automated route? Like, how do you think about the business arc? And we talk about kind of business black belts, like you've got to earn your stripes. Like, I'd imagine it's getting more difficult. So if you look at you and I, like I'm kind of I've written some meta or not our middleware, I guess, between platforms, but I'm not trying to build the super platform.
Sure.
Like you are. How do you decide between being a services company and a software company?
Well, I got involved into the technology as far as like active business creation format, really starting this kind of later than I think you would typically would if you were, if you look at a lot of, I guess, my peers, a lot of them, right when they get out of college or graduate school, they're ready to jump into their opportunity. They found something and they go, let's do that. I think where my personal path or journey was a little bit unique is, I think I was 30, 39 maybe, or 38 when I really kind of got the bug to really create Filejet. And that's kind of late in life when you think about technology entrepreneurs. And I look back at that question a lot of like, should I have started this sooner, or would I have started it sooner? But, I brought so much to the table as far as past experience with other businesses or other, working with other partners, and just, what you bring to the table as part of your journey, I think was pretty crucial and pretty critical. And I think it helps my decision-making today, just because I've cut my teeth in a lot of different areas. But I think the negative of that is, you have to manage your time a little bit differently. So, and what's important to me as, call it a, 44-year-old father and business owner, is really different compared to a 26-year-old, where, time is yours. And the 26-year-old still has to work 24 hours a day. I still have to work 24 hours a day, but I think it's the prioritization. I've got to get to kid events because I don't want to miss those. I like being home for dinner. That to me is really important. I like driving my daughter to school a few days a week. So those are real. And I like, obviously spending time with my wife and making sure we have time together. So what ends up happening is you have to really, I think, you got to really use those time management skills that you developed over the years, because those things are important, really important, and probably more important. But you have to have the passion, really. It's because it is a 24-hour type of a situation, as you know. So I think if you lack that fire, that passion, you probably have different things that you want to do. But I'm not sure if that answered your question. I kind of went pretty wide on that one, but it's that bringing those skills, I think, that I learned over the first 20 years, 15 years of my career probably make Filejet better, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, what I've noticed is you have to have a why that extends beyond the things that outside people think would be fulfilling.
Exactly.
So getting interviewed on a podcast or making money or getting like those things I've noticed they're also relative that in any one area, even if you're the most successful in the world, like you said, if you're like a Bezos or Gates, you might still look at someone like you and envy their family life. Yeah, like these things aren't actually they're all interrelated. It's hard. It's really hard to remind yourself of that.
That's a really good point. And I think, the passion, not to sound too corny, but I really love it. I love the team that we have working for us. And granted, yeah, there's some days where you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, I could be doing other things and making a lot more money initially. But you have to get excited about it. And I love the relationships. When we got together, we clicked really well. And I just liked talking to you. I liked hearing your challenges and engaging. And I love seeing what our users and customers are doing. I think that's incredibly fun because as we, onboard new clients onto the platform, we obviously, as a software company, we want to do that as fast as we possibly can and get them the switch turned on so the automation takes over. But it's really cool to dig in and see what other people are doing and getting those relationships and meeting them. And, not everybody you're going to gel with and get really, they're just going to be, you're going to be their vendor or service provider and they're going to do their thing. But a lot of clients are like us, where they love talking and interacting and learning about what everybody else is doing. And I think that's really fun. And you have to love that because it's hard, right? I mean, let's be totally honest with you. There's some great days, there's some really bad days. And, you got to love problem solving. You got to love interacting with people. You got to have that fire. Or else, like I said, there's just easier things to do. There's easier livings to make. But this for me is just what I like. And, I kind of joke with my wife, we build up Filejet and, 10 years, 15 years, we sell it. And, she looks at me and goes, "You're never going to be able to sit still." And I disagree with her a little bit. Like I'm looking forward to that next thing, but being able not to rush into it would be pretty nice luxury. So.
Yeah. And I've noticed the same thing for me. They always say it's the journey. And I think that's probably confuses people. I just think it's just the day-to-day work. Like if you enjoy the intensity,
yeah,
it's like, that's what you're going to find. Like whether you're retired, it's the guy at the nursing home that's, was a general contractor that's redoing the pipes in the public bathroom without permission because that's what their brain likes to do. Like,
yeah.
I heard a story about Bernie Madoff in prison. I guess he controls the, cigarette trade or something. I forget. But so it's kind of like the whole idea was the same thing. Like what people gravitate to, they're going to gravitate to wherever you put them. And that's kind of like you and I, much better than, getting involved in any kind of financial scheme. We just really enjoy the meeting people and helping them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Which is, so when I was actually, a karate brown belt. So I never made it to black because my college baseball career got in the way. Okay. But I started this show with the premise of sort of thinking about in karate, there's a very linear progression from white belt, yellow belt, or it's orange, green stripe, brown, 3 degrees of brown, black, 3 degrees of black. And then you kind of get up to, I think, a 10th degree black belt. Then they kind of boot you out of the profession and say, you've got to go make your own style.
And you're a ninja at that point.
Yeah. So you go, so like Kung Fu or something, Aikido, like I think how it works is like, someone becomes a 10th degree black belt in Aikido and then it would start Kung Fu. So the whole thing it got me thinking about is each of us has these key moments in our lives from a career perspective. And maybe they broaden from just career, but that really kind of define our approach today. I know I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't prepare you for this, but I would love to think through with you. Are there one or two of these kind of belt moments in life where you learned something or had a mentor or took an approach that you feel like gave you a gem of wisdom or a character trait that now looking today, you're like, that is one of those belt moments that's really helped me at Filejet. And it's okay if you don't have the answer because obviously this is episode 1, so I'm still learning how to prepare guests.
Gotcha. Well, that's, I did a little homework actually, and I don't know if I want to call it homework. I did some Googling before this just to kind of think, I'm not familiar with the martial arts other than what I watch on TV. And, I was doing a little research. There are so many belts. And I think kind of what you hit the nail on the head is like, even when you get to be a black belt, there's like more chapters to go, right? You're never done. And I think that's the fun about what we do is we're always learning. And it kind of feels like you're always paying dues a little bit too. So if you don't like paying dues, I think you maybe think about a different career path, but you're always paying dues. You're always learning. You're always going from the green to the brown belt or whatever the order is. And even when you think I am by no means a black belt, so I'm maybe a little bit of a misnomer on this first episode, but maybe you'll get to the black belts over the years. But there's been so many pivotal moments, and you mentioned something about mentorship. I have been so blessed by having some unbelievable mentors. You know, I mean, obviously, you have my dad is a great mentor to me in a lot of ways. My grandfathers, but even those kind of mentors as a family are different than a true mentor. Not a true mentor, just like a business mentor. And I'm really lucky. I've had a couple of great ones along the way, and those mentors that I've aligned myself with, and I've really been fortunate enough to have them spend time with me. One of which, a gentleman named Mark Friend, which was really pivotal in my career early on. He really had a great approach that and I always knew I wanted to. I've been with my wife for a number of years, and family was always a really big part of what I saw myself doing going forward. And he really had a great view and approach to balancing family with work, because like we talked about earlier, it is a 24-hour type of thing, unfortunately, just for people like us. I don't think we could ever get into maybe a more traditional structure, but he really helped me kind of take a good look at how to think about work and outside of work life. And he was a very spiritual person, how he balanced everything, which is really like such a strong foundation. So I would say he kind of, I remember having some conversations with him where I was like, oh my gosh, that's like such a good point, actually. And I think during, and I worked for Mark under him for probably 10 years. And I think maybe some pivotal moments in that journey, in that portion of my life, were really instrumental in shaping on where I'm at today at Filejet. I was doing a lot of, at that time, I was doing commercial real estate advisory work with a lot of tech companies, actually, which was fun, really fun. And that's probably where I got my first little bug, but also every different industry. And you see all of these different business owners or managers, operators, from operation to finance to HR. And you really get a very wide breadth of experience and exposure, and it just kind of opens your perspective. But I remember having in that role, or I don't know what you want to call it, or time in my life where I thought, it was more galvanizing as far as really where I wanted to spend my time and energy, right, for the next 10, 20 years. And that's really where I pivoted from being more of just kind of an, I don't want to say passive investor, but maybe just like an investor with maybe like my day job, into transitioning, intentionally into actually building my own technology company. And, I've got partners in Filejet. We have another business that they handle. So I think that was kind of a pivotal moment. It was just, listening to, some of the mentors I had, and just kind of go, that's a good point. Or, yeah, I could see myself doing that. Or this is really where I get excited, and I think that's important.
Yeah. And it is amazing too. Like Tony Robbins always says, whatever you want to do, someone else has probably already done. I think it's the best advice that you can get on something like this, where it's so complicated and feels so hard, because you have to decide. Like one of my favorite books is by Ray Dalio, because it's literally, this is the number one hedge fund investor in the world. And it's like, these are the principles that I committed to a while ago to build the company.
I love that.
Or like Jeff Bezos is the same thing. It's like, these are like the 13 things every Amazon leader is going to do. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right that when you get those little nuggets along the way, whether personally or professionally, and many of them coming from family, but as you just kind of broaden it, it is really nice. Because what I found for me is that because I'm so young as relative to our customers, just in general, like most of the CEOs like you of our customers have a few years on me. It's helpful for me because everyone's your mentor. You can learn a lot about it through that lens. And I've noticed that that's what's made it fulfilling for me, is you almost feel like you're working on behalf of those people that are investing in you.
Very true.
And I'm kind of scared of the day that, I don't know, when I'm 65 and there's no one older than me to mentor me in the trenches. But it's cool that we've had a similar experience. And now, have there ever been moments for you where, like in Filejet, where, like you said, the temptation of whether the short-term cash flow of a different job versus kind of the longer tail of a VC-backed software company, or the difficulty, or have there ever been times where it's like, I just don't know if I want to be doing this or should be doing this? And was there something you fell back on when your back was against the wall that you could pass on? Like whether a thought or a quote or, yeah.
Yeah, that yeah, I think you're always going to have those moments where, this is such a tough question. And I do like listening to a lot of business podcasts. I like to do that. I go for walks and listen to a lot of podcasts. But those are, that's like the, oh, do you have any regrets? Most of the podcasts that are talking about the regrets one is, they went through it, they had a big exit or whatever, which definitely we haven't had. But
well, they're too success focused because they're just the 1% anomalies. This is the pro. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, that's a good point. Regrets, absolutely. I mean, I don't know who doesn't have, I don't know if regrets is the right word, but just times where you're like, okay, that was, I think just lessons, right? You learn lessons, and sometimes the best lessons you learn are I hate to sound corny, but it's kind of the hardest ones, where you have a moment, you have to get really creative, and you have to figure it out. You have to win, where you trust your gut a little bit, but also trust your experience. That's kind of why I think kind of starting Filejet in my kind of late 30s was a really good thing, because I brought to the table a lot of that past life experience. But there are times where you go, oh my gosh, like maybe you invest a lot of time with an employee that you're really kind of trying to groom, and then they want to do something else, and hey, that's great for them, but you're like, oh gosh, I really saw that person kind of growing into a role and growing with the company. That's I like getting back to that mentorship that I experienced. I probably take a lot of I probably put a lot of energy into that as well with my employees, because I got a lot out of it. So I kind of take that same, well, if I got a lot out of it, I'm going to try to maybe pass that along. And then there's days where things go wrong, things go wrong, right? Let's just be totally real. Like there's going to be times where the system didn't work. It wasn't because we have every system doesn't work at some time, and there's a bug and you find it and you fix it. But at the time it feels huge, right? And just, oh my gosh, that was, that didn't work that one time, and it's the wheels are falling off. Well, no, the wheels are not falling off, right? We got to find it, we got to tweak it, we got to make it better, and we progress and we move on. And I think that happens with gigantic companies, that happens with small companies, but all of those little between a rock and a hard place moments are just kind of, they make you a little callous, I think, in a good way, because you learn something and you get really uncomfortable. And I think that's good. I think being uncomfortable can be really good sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. I look at it in my own journey. Most of the hardest things, like I had to learn customer service from, in many ways, the worst customers. Like, or you just think those things that are painful in the moment teach you the most, and what you would never wish too much ease on yourself because you're not growing. Like if it's too easy, and you're right. Fortunately, if you set the goals like you or I have, it's never that easy, because all these systems, I like how you said it, there's always a bug, whether the system is sales copy or software or recruiting or whatever, there's always some reason it's not working as well as it could. And I think I've learned to embrace that uncertainty. Like for a while, I would crave the like everything's perfect, and then you realize, even Jeff Bezos. I mean, you see what happened with their factory collapsing the other day, and some of the fallout. It's like even the guy who's probably the best on earth at this, he's still got problems waking him up at 10 at night. Like, what do we do?
For sure.
Like, and it's it gives you an appreciation. Now, I love to kind of finish these with a question about so someone like you. I admire how you go about your business. We talked about sort of some of the influences you've had. I know you're not a huge reader, but you are a big podcast listener. If someone wanted to be you who was 20 years old, like they're a college student, they want to be a software entrepreneur in the holy grail of places of California, what would be 2 or 3 podcasts that you would recommend, whether to them or anyone else who's an entrepreneur, that have just added the most value to your life?
Oh, that's a tough one. I do read a little bit, but I think my dilemma, I read a lot, maybe not recreational reading. Maybe I need to do more recreational reading. I like Eric Larson. I don't know if you've ever heard of Eric Larson, but my problem is I get in bed and start to read and I fall asleep before I hit the page. So I end up reading the same page 9,000 times and I just don't get anywhere. Built to Sell Radio is a good one. I like that one. I like the story, right? Because they're great for, you're on a walk, you're on the treadmill. Not that I don't go on a treadmill, but you're on a bicycle and you need to kind of detach from work, but you also just kind of want some entertainment in a way. And I think some of those podcasts are really entertaining. I don't, and I think they're educational too. So, I mean, hey, what's better than having a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of education, and a lot of, and I'm kind of blanking out on the couple. I can look on my phone real quick on the ones that I just kind of have them on the library. But, the one thing, Reid Hoffman's got a great one, Masters of Scale. I think that's one of my favorites. The Wall Street Journal, they don't, they've got some great videos that you can listen to. They have a whole video section on their app, Wall Street Journal video section, which is great. I really like those. And those are short little snippets. But I was actually talking to one of my partners about this the other day. We're just kind of having a quick lunch and, talking about a podcast came up, right? And it's, you kind of flip through the podcast and you kind of cherry pick the ones you want to listen to. And there was one that I listened to all of the other episodes. I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's 2 or 3 left that I'm like, what do I have in common with these people, right? I mean, they're doing something totally different. Maybe they're in a nonprofit space, or maybe they're somewhere internationally. Maybe they're not even in the United States, and you kind of, I don't say reluctantly listen to them, but you kind of click on them, and next thing you know, it's the end of the podcast, and you're like, oh my gosh, like you find yourself nodding your head as you're walking or listening to it, like, oh yeah, I can relate to that, or hey, that's a really good point. So I would say, even don't be so narrowly focused. I mean, just do some experimenting when it comes to it, because I think some of the coolest lessons that you learn are ones that come out of left field that you're not looking for. And I think, those couple of podcasts that I was reluctantly listening to just because I didn't have anything else to, those were like, oh my gosh, that was really cool. Or that person really did something that was neat, or I love that idea. So they kind of come out of left field a little bit. And my wife's turned me on to some, podcasts that she's listened to and that are not business related. And those are always great ones too, because you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting too. And I think it's great for your relationship too. If your spouse is listening to something, it's good to kind of be aligned with them on a lot of the best you can too. So.
And it's so interesting you say that too, because I've noticed the same thing with reading physical books. Is a book like this has so many ideas that implementing it, like I like them because you can flip through them at any time, because you're not going to read this for 40 hours and then like suddenly go apply it to Filejet. Yeah. So what I've done is sort of 2 varieties. If I want the conversational, I'll do the podcast. And if I want the author's perspective, like if I just really want to think like a Jim Collins or like a Tom Peters or like a Dave Ramsey, I have the Audible versions of these books, because I found they actually play almost identical to podcasts.
Yeah, very true.
And so it's been helpful because you can still sort through the chapters. So I was doing Gary Vee's new book this morning, and it was like on gratitude. It just helped me. And he was kind of talking about this concept of putting, the mud of ungratitude or whatever on yourself and then hosing yourself off with the gratitude hose. And it's like, good idea, like you said, where you're not thinking about it. But I found, like you, that you have to slow down. Like you can overwork your brain, but our brains are either on or off. Yeah. So it's like, what do you do in that white space when you're tired but need entertainment? And you're right. I think it just kind of seeps in a little better. Whereas if you're doing this when you're tired, like it's just your brain just can't do it. Yeah.
Agreed. You'd mentioned, the audiobooks too. I love audiobooks. I'm in Southern California, so I do my fair share of driving. 0 to 1, that Peter Thiel book, I thought was really a great read. I think, especially for younger people. I think for younger people, try to find a mentor. I mean, understand that where do you want to be? Where do you want to, reverse engineer your path a little bit, see who's there, and try to find a mentor and ask. It means that, talk about getting out of your comfort zone. If you're a college person and trying to just give somebody a call that you found on the internet or that's in that space, and you're going to talk to a lot that are just maybe too busy, but you're going to come across some people that are like, yeah, I like to do this. And I think I've had the gift to mentor a couple people in their careers coming up. And I really found that rewarding for myself, really. They got a lot out of it too, but it was so great to help them. And there's a lot of people that want to help, right? We're so lucky that, we're in this, we live where we live and we do what we do. And there's a lot of people that are going to be too busy to give you the time of day if you're a young person, but there's also going to be a lot of people that go, hey, yeah, I mean, I've got a lot to give back. I'm really thankful for the path I've been on and everything I've been able to accomplish. I want to kind of pay, I don't know if pay it back is the right term, but so finding a mentor if you're young, I think is really important.
And I love the way you said it too. It's like there's so many people who are willing to help each other, and we all forget that. Because all it takes is if you reach out to 10 people and 9 don't return and 1 becomes a great mentor. I mean, there's so many of those. Like I've talked to everyone from like Admiral McRaven to Gary V to just all from cold email or cold handwritten notes. Just like and it's sometimes it's one time. Like with Admiral McRaven, it was just all about like the missions and how he thought about his life. And I've never talked to him since that one time. But you think like that's someone at the pinnacle of world, how many people must want to talk to them, and they still say no, a portion of my life is going to go back to some random college student who wants to hear my story. And I've been amazed by that, because it's more often than not, if you really mean it, if someone reached out to you, Andy, I want you to be my mentor, if it's different than saying, hey, I see you've done 4 software businesses and did real estate, I'm trying to understand. And I've noticed that that's reciprocated amazingly. So final question, if anyone listening to the podcast wants to reach out to you, is the best way LinkedIn, or what? How would if they had a question or wanted to get to know you a little better?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a really easy way to get a hold of me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Just you can look me up, Andy White. I don't know if I have a special number or anything, but you'll see my face, so maybe you'll recognize me. But yeah, or you can send me an email, andy@filejet.com. I'm always connecting with people, and one thing I will. Thank you very much, by the way, Miles, for looping me into this. I was really interested when you extended the invites, and I've always really liked our conversations. And one thing that you did say that really surprised me, I think, was when you had described your journey in the business and kind of being more on the, I won't say on the front end. I didn't even know you were on the front end of your journey or where you were at before we had a chance to talk, but I just automatically assumed it's like, well, what, I'm still doing my thing. I'm not like a 65-year-old person, at the end of this, like, or the tail end of this long career or life. But, it's great to be able to talk to people that are kind of similar in age and maybe just a couple of years, 5-10 years ahead of you, because, it's those practical steps, right? It's not the huge leap, 20 years ahead. It's like, okay, 20 years ahead, who can wrap their arms around that? Like, hey, but maybe in the next 5 years or 3 to 5 years, it's a path that you're on. And I appreciate the opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Well, once we've got the show built up, we'll definitely have to have you back. I greatly appreciate you joining and hope you have a fantastic rest of the day.
All right. You too, Miles. Thank you. Really appreciate it.